Is there a such thing as too much filtration? That's a subject that was brought up by a viewer in my comment section on my last video. I thought it was an awesome subject to do a video on today. Not sure 876 says, hold up. Overfiltering won't reduce your maintenance. Filters don't remove nitrates unless you're exporting nutrients. On my last video, I was talking about when you have large cichlids like Oscars, you want to overfiltrate. And what he's getting at is that overfiltrating doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to do maintenance, which I agree on. And I don't. See, he's completely correct. Properly sized filtration system on an aquarium for the size of the aquarium and the bioload, which is the amount of fish and the waste and the amount of food and the amount of the stuff that's decaying in the water. If you have that size correctly, it doesn't really matter if you have extra or less, your nitrate is going to remain the same. But as far as the actual maintenance, it does make a huge difference. And in this video, I'm explaining to you my personal opinion on why overfiltrating your tank is actually a great thing to do. So I'm editing, right? And I just realized something. When you get a filter, it says this filter is for this size aquarium. But how does that maker of that filter know how many fish you have in it? You can have a 55-gallon aquarium with X amount of fish in it, and that filter is sufficient. But you can still have a 55-gallon aquarium with 3 times that X amount of fish, and then that filter is no longer viable for that aquarium. So can you overfiltrate your tank? Let's dive in. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you a couple of pro tips and hacks regarding overfiltrating your aquarium that might surprise some of you, might make you go bing. Even for some people that may have had aquariums for a long time, it's a simple thing that honestly I'm surprised a lot of people have never really thought about. Over the last couple of years, the subject of no filter tanks have become very popular on YouTube. So I felt, this was a alternative, a break from the norm, an opposite end of the spectrum to that fish keeping lane that might interest you. So what happens when you overfiltrate aquarium? What are you actually doing when you overfiltrate? Well, you're adding extra beneficial bacteria or adding extra material for beneficial bacteria to grow, which allows you to house more life in your aquarium. A lot of these no filter or very little filtered aquariums only could get away with that because they have a very small bioload, whether it be very small fish or very lightly stocked aquariums. More fish is always a good thing. At least for me it is. You know what I mean? I got very little self-control. I got a serious impulse control issue, like a lot of us do. You have extra mechanical filtration, so you have more sponge or stuff to clean out particles in your water. So if you have a lot of debris in your aquarium floating around, you have a lot more things to catch it, and you have increased flow. Now see, that could be a problem. That could actually be a big problem for most people, but it also could be a benefit, a huge benefit for most people. Let's go over the pros and cons of having a lot of flow in your aquarium. Of course, the biggest con in having a lot of flow in your aquarium is a lot of fish can't handle all that flow. For instance, angelfish, small itty bitty like guppies and stuff like that cannot handle so much flow that they just get pushed around all the damn time, right? For the sake of not tiring your fish out to the point that they get stressed out and die, increased flow could be an issue. Not could be, it definitely is an issue. Decor, especially like if you have sand. Increased flow will definitely mess up your whole scenario if you have sand, where the sand will start moving around and get pushed all up to one spot. If you have a planted aquarium, it could uproot plants. Your plants would be leaned over to the side, depending, like if you have like Java fern, jungle valve where it's really high. It'll always be linked over to the side. So yeah, that could be an issue. That definitely could be an issue. Let's not forget about the intake. You got a big old monster filter on your aquarium. You probably got a big old intake just sucking up fish left and right, just all sucked up against the, you know what I'm saying, the intake, like, you can't get away from it. Yeah, that's not good either. Like I said, I got some tips and tricks at the end of the video to overcome that. So, yeah, you know. So now let's talk about some of the pros. My personal favorite is increased oxygen. All that flow shakes the water. You got a whole lot of motion in the ocean, increasing the oxygen in your water column. So if you have a whole bunch of fish sucking up all that oxygen out of your water, you have a lot more to take the place of all that oxygen all your fish are sucking up out of the water. So increased oxygen, always a good thing. Dead spots. For a lot of people, especially people who have big old monster fish, dead spots is an issue. This is what dead spots are. So a lot of times when you have fish going to the bathroom or you know, extra food, you'll notice that there's a spot in the bottom of the aquarium that the food just kind of just hangs around and swirls around and doesn't really get picked up by your intake on your filter. So with increased flow, you got a lot of movement in the water. That stuff doesn't get to settle there and eventually gets pushed to your intake. So you don't have any dead spots. All that stuff doesn't get to just sit there and look nasty. It gets pushed into your filter. That stuff in your water column also, just like the dead spots in your on your floor, your stuff in your water column gets pushed into that intake also. It doesn't get to just linger. You know what I mean? Here's one that a lot of people don't think about. A lot of reasons why people have algae that grows on surfaces is because there is no water movement. It's allowed to settle. When it starts to grow, if there's nothing like kind of no friction from water movement, that algae is allowed to grow. So a lot of times, a lot of water movement prohibits algae growth on surfaces. That's something that a lot of people don't talk about. But yeah, increased water flow will help prevent algae growth on surfaces. True, it is. Ask somebody. Here's one a lot of people really love. That increased water flow at the top of the aquarium that shakes around, that's what causes that shimmer that everybody thinks is so pretty. You know, with the lights coming down and it's all and the lights is just shimmering all over the place. Yeah, you don't get that when the water doesn't move. You get it when the top of the water is just shaking. There's a whole lot of shaking in the, you know what I mean? A whole lot of shaking and baking. You know what I mean? That's where the shimmer comes from. So, you know, it looks pretty. I don't know what happened, but while I was recording all this, something got corrupt. There was some corruption going on. As far as maintenance goes and having a lot of filtration, it does help in maintenance. Like I said, with that whole swirling of the dead spots and the whole, you know, stuff getting to the intake, it's easier to remove the physical debris. So in that aspect, it does help with maintenance. It makes it easier for you to remove debris more efficiently. I'll be the first to admit, the pros and cons list that I just rattled off would make it seem like a planted tank, a dirted tank, a lot of filtration wouldn't work. But I got some tips and tricks that, like I said, I'm surprised a lot of people don't talk about this, that will allow you to have a lot of filtration and have all the benefits of having them slow moving fish with plants and dirted aquariums. And like I said, I am so surprised this doesn't happen more often. Nobody really talks about this. Instead of having one humongous filter causing a typhoon in your aquarium, get yourself a whole bunch of small filters. You don't even have to do it all at one time. You can do it little by little. Find yourself a small filter on sale. Little by little, just line the back of your aquarium with small filters. Now, what this is going to do is that this is going to give you the extra beneficial bacteria, the extra water flow, the extra mechanical filtration, give you all the extra stuff, the extra water movement without the intense flow of one huge pump blasting waves inside your water. A lot of people don't talk about that, but you can do it. It is very, very doable, and it's cheap. Like I said, they don't have to be expensive. They could be cheapos from Walmart. You know what I'm saying? So can you have too much filtration in your aquarium? In my opinion, no. You can never have too much filtration in your aquarium, but you can have the wrong application for your filtration in your aquarium. Get what I'm saying? If you enjoyed this little conversation we just had, then please consider subscribing and leaving a comment and thumbs up. I'm gonna leave a couple more videos that you might be interested in, and thank you in advance.